What's up, everybody? Listen, I'm Pastor Sean. I'm here with my super cute husband, Pastor Edwin, who happens to be dressed like the Grim Reaper tonight. He had his hood on just before we came on. I was like, what's up with that? Right?
It's past Halloween, but we came as good and evil.
Oh my God. Y'all pray his strength in the Lord in Jesus' name. Listen, we are so excited to have you today. We have a part two. Unica, I almost said Pastor Unica J coming back up here today. But listen, we need you to hashtag, we need you to tag, we need you to share. Let's go. Let us know where you're watching from. We're super excited. Before we bring Unica out, we're doing some warm up and all of that different stuff. But I want to talk to y'all about how Pastor Edwin and I are walking, because I feel like it's some things that y'all are really missing about this journey right here. So we're doing our social media outreach. We're sharing with our friends. We want you guys to do the same thing. And then just before we bring Unica out, I really want to talk about how we're walking, because some of you have sent some messages and made some comments. And I really want to bring some clarity to this thing right here, because I think it is super, super important. So how is everybody doing tonight? I want to know where you're watching from. And you know what else I want to know? I want to know, how is the weather where you are? I was talking to Crystal today, and she was a little frustrated because it was 55 in New Orleans, but it was 70. And she was like, how in the world is it colder there? So I want to know where you're watching from, and I want to know how your weather is while you are sharing this broadcast, while you're inviting other people in. I want to know what's going on with you, where you are, and what your weather is like.
And thank you, Ms. Collins, for letting us know not only that you are here and you're alive and where you're from. Thank you for also telling us what platform you're watching from. She hashtagged YouTube, so she's letting us know she's watching from YouTube. I always think it's interesting to find out where people like to engage with their social media, whether it's Facebook or YouTube, or we don't have TikTok. We're not doing this via TikTok or other places, but I always find that very interesting. And so as you are letting us know that, let me just welcome you once again to Relationships 101. This is our November edition. We have one more before the year is over, and we will have been faithful to all 12 of them. In fact, if you have been here for all of them, including tonight, why don't you just put like an 8 in the comment section? Even if you didn't see it live, but you actually went back and watched the replay on the honor system. Let's see how many people have caught all of the Relationships 101 in 2023. So if so, put an 8 in the comment section. Keep letting us know where you're watching from. Keep letting
look
us
at
know.
that. We got some 8s.
Keep letting us know where you're watching from and what the weather is like.
So let's talk about this. You're doing a series for Ed Talk.
I am.
Tell us about the series, because I think you said something really, really powerful today about how so many married couples need to go check out your guest from today, our good friend Apostle Stephen Banks, who did an amazing job. But tell them a little bit about the series, because they need to go back and watch that too.
Yeah. So Ed Talk season 2 ended 2 weeks ago, and I really was just going to take a break until the first of the year. But the Lord put it on my heart to do basically what I call a mini series. And this is kind of a mini series within the podcast, and it's called The Blueprint. And no, I'm not a rapper. I'm not Jay-Z, but it's called The Blueprint.
Best rapper alive.
Lessons from impactful leaders. And of course, the first week I had Pastor Sean on, and it was a great interview, great conversation. And then earlier today at noon Central Standard Time, I had Apostle Stephen W. Banks on. Apostle Banks is a good friend of ours. We probably met him probably a decade and a half ago, maybe. But he's written several books. But one of the books that he has written that I gravitate to, that I really find very not only informational, but also spiritually awakening, so to speak, is a book he wrote called Healing the Father Wound. And if you go and you search on the internet, there's lots of variations of that. Healing the father's wound, healing a father wound. But he's Apostle Stephen Banks, and his is called Healing the Father Wound. And he really is talking from the standpoint of being transformative, and how all of us all of us, men, women, all of us have wounds from our fathers either not being there or being there, but not being there in the right way. And even if you had a great father, there are still certain things that sometimes we didn't get from our father the right way that we then take into how we interact with God. It was just an amazing conversation. And I encourage those of you who didn't know about Ed Talk, or you didn't watch it, or you didn't have time, or you were busy, or forgot, whatever the case may be, you ought to go back. It's worth the hour to listen to it, even if you have to fast forward some of the first part where we're just doing the introduction part. I asked him questions about his book. I asked him questions about just about his own personal life. He shares how he didn't meet his father until he was 13, and now his father's 88, and they have a great relationship. But how he literally was running a mega ministry. And when I say a mega ministry, I mean like the one that you would consider to be a mega ministry, 2,000 or more people, but how fragile he was inside because of what he didn't receive from his father.
One of the most powerful things I thought he said today is that you can have a wound because your father died.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was such a powerful thing, that it's not necessarily that maybe your father did something injurious to you.
It's the absence.
It's the absence of that. And I thought the other thing that he said was when he said, equate wound to grief.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have grief moments surrounding your father, even if they're not in your life by something that they didn't have control over.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really good. But the other thing that he said that I absolutely loved, when he was saying that according to Malachi, it's the spirit of Elijah that resolves the father wound, and that even if our natural fathers don't have the ability to be what we need, or they've passed on,
refuse,
right, that the Holy Spirit will help us.
Yeah.
And not only will the Holy Spirit help us and heal us, but he will raise up other people to assist us. And I thought that was a beautiful thing. In this natural world. Yeah. So you guys should go and check that out.
Yep.
Now, while you guys are still coming in, everybody knows that Pastor Elwin and I have been walking, but I want to address this because I keep getting messages from people, particularly from women, I have to be honest, who say things like, that's what I'm talking about. I wish that my husband and I could walk together. And I think it's important for people to understand that we have a common goal, but we do not walk together necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, especially we started doing in October, we started the 100-mile challenge. And I think maybe the first couple of weeks, because I can go back and look at our pictures, we took what we call our obligatory picture after each walk. But there's been few and few pictures in between, because although sometimes we may go at the same time, we're not necessarily even walking at the same pace or together. So yes, we have the same goal, but we don't always, I don't want people thinking it's this fairy tale where we're skipping through the tulips, walking hand in hand together at the same pace.
I think people really need to hear that. And I think it's important for them to understand, even when we do our obligatory pick, sometimes that is because we have met up at the end and took the picture.
Mm-hmm.
The truth of it is that Edwin walks a lot faster than I do. And so typically the only time we are walking together is on a day that I am walking my fast walk and he is walking his recovery walk. And I think that this is what happens when
we may be in the same general area because of where we walk. I always like to keep my eye on you somewhere. I
appreciate that.
Dogs and people and stuff. But we're not beside each other walking most of the time. In fact, just because of our pace, I may do 6 miles and you may do 4, but I'm timing that so that I can be back with you near where you're going to get in your car, or I ride back with you, or you drive home, or I walk in front of you and then double back. I make sure that you're safe, but you don't try to make me walk your pace, and I don't try to make you walk mine.
And I think it's important to say, because I think what happens a lot of times is people use couples that they look up to, and we appreciate the people who look up to us, but we don't want you to live in some false sense about what things look like. And I think one of the biggest mistakes, I feel like I've talked to a lot of people about this in October and November. We gonna put the hoodie back on, okay?
I know it's actually cold to me, so I got to get some food at some point.
We can talk about that, but that's another session.
Yeah.
But I think that it's important for people to understand that being married doesn't mean we have to be the same.
No.
And I think that people get caught up in that, and it's like, oh, Sean and Strick, they do everything together. We don't. And even when we do things together, we don't do them the same way. And I think that it is, I think that it's very important that you can learn from other people, but you shouldn't make up stuff in your mind that's not true.
Yeah.
So by the time the fifth woman said to me, I wish my husband would walk with me the way your husband walks with you, I was like, oh, y'all got a fallacy about what's happening. And let's also talk about this, that there are days, because when we're out there together, you do keep your eye on me. But there are times that you walk in the morning and I walk in the afternoon. There are times I walk in the morning and you walk in the afternoon. We're not always in the same space. Now, one of the things
and I don't want to say this to sound rude, I don't walk for you.
Well, amen.
I walk for me.
Amen.
I'm walking for myself. So whether you walk or not is of no consequence to me, in the sense that I've committed this discipline for myself. Now, if we can do this discipline together in some way, that's great. But I don't think women should be waiting on their husbands to do it. Walk for you. And you may actually be the catalyst thing that encourages him to get himself up off that couch and come walk. But if you're just waiting on him, then you're really cheating yourself.
And I walk for me.
Absolutely, you do.
In fact,
the first 100-mile challenge.
The first 100-mile challenge,
I did the whole 100.
Well, no, the last 8 miles you pushed me through because I was tired. Okay. So on a Sunday evening, you said we're gonna finish these miles, right? And so I just think that it is. I just don't want y'all.
But you had done 92.
I had done 92. I was gonna finish now. I just don't want you guys to create. I see so many people looking at couples, going couples goals. And sometimes it's not even real what you're looking at. And other times you made up something in your mind. So I wanted to clarify that Elwin and I are supporting each other in this journey. And if I say to him, like sometimes I'll say, hey, I'm going to take a really long walk, check on me. He'll check on me or something like that. But you can't make your husband responsible for you in that sense. So I wanted to say that. I wanted to say that. Right. Now, I'm ready to bring my girl in. Are y'all ready? Listen, Unika killed it last time. And so much so that I think this is one of the, other than when we talked about feedback, giving and receiving feedback, because baby, giving and receiving feedback had people some triggered and hot. Yeah. But other than that, I think that this is one of the most well-received sessions that we've had. And so we want to bring, I wish we had some music. I could see her in the studio. She got her hat on. And we ready. Like, listen. Ready. And so welcome to the stage, my girl, Unika J.
How funny. Let me see if I can get more light. How are you?
You're great. How are you?
I'm good. Is my sound okay? I know I was late.
No, I think we can hear you. I think we're good.
If you hadn't told the people, they wouldn't have known. I never would have busted you like that.
Just remember, in your upper right-hand corner, click that comment button so you can see what everybody's saying.
I see them now. I learned that from last time. I'm a quick study. So I was like, wait a minute. I was in a private chat last time and I can't see. Now I can see everybody's comments.
Oh, I need a hat like that. I'm not gonna ask you to.
It's sold out. Yeah. So listen, I'm trying to figure out what's going on over here with my hair. So they sold out. And they may have them back in stock. Let me look right now. But I know they had sold out. So
you can look later.
Yeah, my bad.
You can look later.
So
wait, hold on. So what's dope about it is I'm famous enough because I'm known by God.
Oh, I like that.
Lord,
it's one of my conversation starters when I'm traveling. People like,
I like that.
No, I definitely need one of those hats. We had you last time and you really shared a lot of your story. And I think that one of the most powerful things that you said, let me paraphrase it. is that in spite of all of the things that had happened to you, that you allow God to heal you.
Mm-hmm.
So y'all can go back and watch some of the things from last time. I definitely think it's worth rewatching. But we talked about your life. We talked about that you were a teen mother. You've been married a couple of times. You've been divorced a couple of times. You're now raising Trey as his mother and the dynamics that you have around that. But one of the things that I really love about you is that in spite of all of the things that you have had happen to you, you did not allow that to keep you in a stage of being broken. I want to jump in right there. I want to jump in. What do you want to say to the people who keep saying, because we might as well just start out with hand grenades and just blowing up stuff, okay?
No, we're not easing in.
Let's not ease in.
No, this part two. We don't have to do that.
We eased in the first
last time we got all the way to rewrite before we end it. So we starting there today.
What do you say to the people who keep saying, but it's because I was a teen mother. It's because I was touched. It's because my marriage didn't work. It's because my kid was incarcerated. What do you say to them today that's going to shift them out of here?
Stop making excuses. Like, I think, one of the things that for me personally is none of the things that happened to me were a pass for me to give up on what I was called to do or how God created me to walk in this earth. So, and in addition to that, I could either use it as an excuse or I can use it as something to propel me into what it is that I'm supposed to do. So there's nothing that's happened, regardless of, from the molestation to being a teenage mom, to going through divorce, to being in ministry, to, I mean, be careful with this testimony because some stuff I ain't shared publicly and I want to start tonight. But none of those things caused me to be in a place where I decide I'm just going to use this as my excuse not to do better. Right. And I think all of those things that I share, even from my mother, my kids finding my mother dead on the bathroom floor about 22 years ago, those things all have become a part of my testimony and have become a part of the story. And I rewrote those in because I run into people that are teen moms. I run into people who are dealing with molestation. I run into people who either have lost their mother or don't appreciate the mom that they have walking the earth, right? And so all of those different stages of adversity have become a testimony where I have an opportunity to help people walk more into their healing through my testimony and in partnership with Jesus. And so I think that when people start hanging their hat on the things that happen to them, that's because they've gotten used to the attention and or pity and and becoming ineffective in what they need to do and using it as an excuse. And so the thing I would say is stop using it as an excuse.
It's so interesting. I remember years ago, we were having a conversation and this is right when I was starting Soul Shift and you were really digging into to rewrite. And one night we were involved in one of our 30-hour conversations and this came up that most people are so used to their story, they don't know who they are without it.
Right.
They would rather have that attention than the uncertainty of something new.
Right. You hear often where people want to be what their circumstances are, right? Mm-hmm. And it works for them. It works for them because people will either befriend them because of it. They find people that have like wounds so they can stick together. And they think that these people that they found are their tribe, right? But those folks are not their tribe. They're just people that they have trauma bonds with. And so they get together with these people and that fuels it. So then they go and they look, they'll go and look for other people that are going to co-sign this space of just staying the same. And you don't have to stay the same. You can be all that God has called you to be, regardless of what's happened to you. There's no real excuse. And I go back to if you think about it, Sean, I've talked about this before, where I can't believe I'm gonna forgot the scripture, but I'm gonna get it right. Jeremiah 1:5, where it says, "Before I formed you in your mother's womb, I knew you." Right. And so when I think about that piece of it, before I formed in your mom's womb, I knew you. That means that he formed me, then he placed me, right? So whatever circumstance I was birthed into and some of the things that happened to me, is not that God's like, oh yeah, I want to birth you into this situation, but he knew I could overcome it. I could overcome it through him. If I try to focus on overcoming it through myself, I would be wildly unsuccessful. But when I submit myself, my story, my circumstances, my pain, all of those things to the Holy Spirit, and to, and allow him to work, then that healing is authentic. It's not a fake type of healing, or just a fake healing, because sometimes people fake healing too.
No, you guys absolutely need to share this. But what I want you to put in the comments right now is, I don't have to stay the same.
Yeah.
And I think you are absolutely a model of somebody who says, I don't have to stay the same. And the other thing that I really, really respect about your journey is you don't succeed to prove them wrong.
No. Now, there was a point in my life where I did. Right there, I believe that one of the reasons early on I was successful. There's some hair that's bothering me. Y'all bear with me, because I'm getting distracted by that, and I'm gonna cut these comments off. I'm gonna let y'all have your own conversation, because I like to see all this stuff, and I see this little fancy stuff popping up. You don't have to stay the same. Let me get my laser focus on. But there was a point, I think one of the reasons why I was successful early on in my career, because what I think a lot of people don't know is I went into leadership, I think, probably at 22 or 23. I went into earning six figures at 22, 23 years old, right? So it was early in my career. But part of that fueled me was to prove some of what my mother said. When my mother found out that I was pregnant with my first son, and I was 17. I was 16, I think I had him at 17. And I remember her saying to me, you've messed your life up. You've ruined your life. You'll never amount to nothing. You are going to be stuck on welfare for the rest of your life. And she named all these things. No man is ever going to want you, all these little things, and she was speaking from her own place of hurt. You right? I'm not giving her a pass, but she was speaking from her own place. This was the last thing she wanted for her little honor roll daughter.
Mm-hmm.
That's the last thing she wanted for her little honor roll daughter who was in the church. Can we talk about it? And so she, in that, she started to say all those things. And so that fueled me to say, I bet I don't. I bet my life is not over. I bet I won't be down at the welfare office telling them all my business and having to give an account for everything. I bet I don't. And so initially I was fueled by it, but I was never satisfied. Right? Because I wasn't doing it for the right reasons. I was never doing it for me. I was doing it to prove her wrong, even after she died. She's dead and in the ground, and I'm still trying to prove something to her. So it wasn't until I totally accepted healing and understood a process of healing that I began to do things for myself and be able to do things to glorify God in the marketplace.
I love that, but I want to say this because I think you're so good. Your whole brand rewrite is so good at, listen, we've been given this rough draft. Let's make it an amazing story. Yeah. So there are people who, when they were 16, their mother said something harmful to them. And now they're 51. And they're like, I can't be successful because my mother didn't affirm me. My mother didn't love me. Now I'm bringing you back to the same place because I know what you're like in that zone. What do you want to say to them? Because that's what we need to be talking to the people. Because at this point, you're only talking to the people who are ready to change. The people who aren't ready to change, they're going to go and find somebody else to let them rehearse their story. They're going to find some people to join their trauma bonds with. Just like we say, all the offended people always find each other, all the broken people. But for the person who has been saying, how? For the person who has been saying, I don't want this story anymore, talk to them like they're sitting here.
Here's what I would ask you. If you're still allowing an old voice to guide you, that means that you have turned off the voice of God in your life, because you have decided that the voice, that trauma voice, that hurtful voice, that disparaging voice, that voice is more important than what God says about you and what you're supposed to do. I'm reminded of Job and how Job was going through, right? If we remember, if you look at the first part of Job, at every little piece, and while he was yet speaking, another thing happened. While he was yet speaking, another thing happened. And it's such a beautiful story for those of you that are walking through trauma and walking through healing, because Job had it bad and he had it by permission. You know, the devil came to the staff meeting and said, let me go mess with Job. And the Lord was like, have at it. And so what I love, though, is at the end, when Job asked, who is this? Who are you listening to? Whose voice is guiding you? And he was allowing his friends to have some level of impact, even though he never denounced God or never, went against God, just like God knew he would. That those voices were around him. And I love when the Lord comes out and he says, who is this? It's something along the lines of, who is this that challenges me? Brace yourself. Because I remember thinking when I first read that, I never, ever want the Lord to say, brace yourself to me under any circumstances. Like, them words you can keep, right? But this thing is that, Job, the Lord had to bring Job back to, look, listen, you know my voice, you understand my voice. Why are you allowing these other voices to guide you? When you get into, if you aren't trained in hearing from the Lord, get up under a pastor that can teach you how to hear from the Lord. And so, and even if you don't know that, just start reading your scriptures and seeing what the word says about you. Because one of the things that my spiritual father taught me early is he had me to put down things that were said to me or things that were going on, and then knock that against the word of God. So if I started to believe I wasn't worthy, what does the scripture say about my worth? If I started to believe that I could never be happy, what does the scripture say about happiness for the saints of God? If I started to believe that my life was over, what does the scripture say about that? What has the Lord said about you and to you about you? Why are you thinking and listening to people that are speaking from a carnal perspective, right? Those people are not, no one is going to come and say disparaging words to you that are coming on behalf of the Lord, unless you're being rebuked. It's still not disparaging, then it's just correction. So what is it about those words that in your soul you decided to attach to? When there's 66 books of word about what your life is supposed to be like. And so the thing is, you have to accept the fact that those were lies, that even though they loved you, they still lied. Even though they were the ones that were supposed to protect you, they still lied. Even though they were ones that were supposed to train you, they still lied. Even though they were ones that were supposed to lead you, they still lied. So once you can accept the fact that that human being lied to you, and when you can look in the mirror and say, even though I'm supposed to love me, I lied to myself. Mm-hmm. Once you can do that, now you can start to look for truth. What does Christ say about me? Well, he says that I am redeemed. He says I'm a new creature. He says I'm the head and not the tail, above and not beneath. He says all these things about me. He says I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I don't even know. I feel like I'm almost preaching. Let me slow down for a second. But he says all these things to me. So I have to go back and I have to align myself with truth. There can be no healing without truth. Could be no healing without it. You have to get back up under the spiritual umbrella and understand that you are a child of God. And if I am a child of God, those disparaging remarks can't stick to me. They can't stick to me. They can't get to me. There's a force field around me. The Holy Spirit has a force field around me that if I allow it, it will reject every lie that tries to get itself close to me and attached to me, because that is not part of my story. At the end of my story, I win. At the end of God's story, he wins. At the end of the story he has about me, I win. So why would I accept anything other than me winning?
Man, you said a lot of stuff. People in the comments, you turned your comments off, but people are saying this is really heavy. But I think one of the most powerful things you said that I want to recap is that there can be no healing without truth. And I think I'm sure we've all seen this. We're in ministry, you're in ministry, that oftentimes when you want to present truth to people, they want to talk about facts. Sometimes when people are in their worst pain and you're saying to them, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, they can't stop saying what their mama said. So I love what you said about why are you allowing a dead voice? Why are you allowing a lie-based voice to guide you? I love that you said that. And for the record, you are preaching tonight, just in case you weren't clear.
Like I had to pull back. I don't know what happened. I was like, hold on. Wait, this is an interview. Let me chill out. Let's say, okay, what's the next question? I was like, that was too many words. My
So
bad.
Lemoyne says, tell us the difference between truth and fact. I'm going to answer first. You can go. Then we'll see if everyone want to add something. Truth and facts is very simple. Truth is what God says. Facts is everything else. So it may be factual that you were diagnosed with something. The truth is by his stripes, I am healed. It may be factual that your father wasn't present or he was abusive. But the truth is, I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. And believers really struggle with that and often get offended when you push them in that way. So, what do you want to say about that?
I think that's 100%. I bounce facts against the word, right? And so those facts, and that's just what Pastor Shun just did. She bounced those facts. This I can't deny what y'all have said the diagnosis is. I can't deny that he walked out on the marriage. I can't deny that the child went to jail, or I can't deny that, certain things happen. Those, but then I can bounce those against the word, right? I can bounce those against the word where it says in Jeremiah also, before I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, to give you an expected end and a hope. So I can bounce it. That's my favorite scripture. It's one of my favorite ones. I done added a few to it. It used to be my favorite scripture. You don't get my. I'm like, I got a few more, but that is one though that I'll be honest. That's one that kept me when hell would be breaking loose in my life, and I'd be looking around. I'm like, this can't be it. Why? Because he knows the plan he has for me, and even though this may be part of the plan, this is not the plan. The problem is most of us quit in the middle of the story. We never allow the pen to be picked back up by the Holy Spirit and continue to write, because we're like, this chapter right here, I can't go past it. I got to stay on this page. And the Lord is like, allow me, submit your life, your plans, and your emotions and your feelings back to me so that I can continue this writing, because you're holding the book closed because not even if you like that chapter, you just don't think that the rest of the story is going to be any good. So since you don't think the rest of the story is going to be any good, you're going to stay stuck in a chapter. And so when I think about my life, I live it. You'll hear me talk about this, or if you follow me anywhere on social media, right now I'm in chapter 50. Next year I'll be in chapter 51. Some of you are still in chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6, chapter 16, chapter 21. And you may be 50, 60, 40, whatever the age may be, but you stopped allowing things to be written when you were younger, because that chapter had you stuck. But tonight is a night that you can say, I am no longer stuck in that chapter. It is time for me to move on, because I'm very interested, Lord, in the story that you have for me. You said that you will be a lamp unto my feet. Where are you taking me? I want to submit this hurt, this pain, my plans, everything I thought that I would be doing at this time. I want to submit it to you so I can go where you want me to go. And I can do what you want me to do, and I can be who you called me to be. And that doesn't mean, a lot of times when people hear stuff like that, they're like, oh, I'm supposed to be up in lights. Not everybody's supposed to be up in lights. We need ushers. Okay. We need people to tell us where to park the cars. We need people to teach the kids. But I think it's important for you to figure out where it is that you're supposed to be. What is it that God has called you to do? Some of the things, the very hurt that you're holding on to, once you release it, when I think about, I'm trying to think of a good example. I'm going to use weeds, but don't look at it in a bad way. I'm thinking about dandelions, right? That dandelion, when it turns into the little fluffy piece of it, and if you have a yard at home, you'll understand what I'm talking about. If you blow that bad boy, then it goes out and the seeds plant, and then what does it do? It produces more dandelions, right? So if you think about it, if I can release this hurt and turn it into something positive and start to talk to people, I can rewrite that hurt into healing. My story now is not, oh my Lord, you don't understand. When I was 6 years old, I got molested. My story is, let me tell you about how the Lord kept me when a man put his hands on me when I was a child, and how I that used to block my ability to have intimacy. But I've been delivered from that. That now I don't think of that anymore as something that I want to walk around with as a burden. I'm using that because guess what? There's a little girl that needs to hear my voice on how to overcome molestation. There's a teenage girl that's promiscuous right now in the high schools in your cities, and she's promiscuous because you know what I'm trying to say, because her uncle touched her and she needs to hear from you. But you sitting here and you're holding on to that seed and keeping that hurt buried, and it's making you sick. It's making your body sick. It's making you emotionally sick. It's making your relationship sick, but you don't want to let it go. But when you release it, then you release that balm of Gilead unto other people and allow them to receive the healing through something that you went through, something you didn't ask for. And I'm not telling you that you stood in line and the Lord was like, that one I want to give molestation, that one I want to give divorce, that one I want our kids that crazy, that one I want to give addiction. That's not what I'm saying to you. What I am saying is, if you are on this live, you have walked through some things. You are on the other side of some things, but you have to see that you're on the other side, because there are people that are waiting on this side to hear your voice so they can get on the other side also. There are too many kids that are out. Y'all need to get healed. Period.
I agree. You know, for me, the idea of truth and fact is the idea that, you know, the Lord told me years ago, facts are subject to change. They're temporal. Facts are temporal. They're subject to change. And he really taught me the difference between that when he was teaching me actually how to guard my mouth. And you go, wait a minute, why would he teach you the difference between truth and fact when it comes to guarding your mouth? Because you have to be careful not to just speak facts because they are visible, right? It's like you said, you have to match facts with God's word, which is true. It's the idea of, you know, I'm riding my bike and I break my arm. And someone says to me, oh my gosh, is your arm broke? By his stripes, I am healed. Yeah, but is your arm broke? By his stripes, I am healed. Or I can go, oh yeah, man, my arm is broke. It's tore up. It's messed up. That may be a fact, but the body will heal itself. And what used to be a fact 8 weeks from now won't be a fact anymore. But what is the truth? The truth remains always, which is that by his stripes, I am healed. And so what I hear you saying is that people have to stop identifying so strongly with their trauma. We have almost, and especially in the church, we've made trauma sexy. It's like who been through more trauma? Who has been through my trauma greater than your trauma? You know, and my trauma 3 times your trauma. And now we start to get identity. And you actually got people who are launching ministries based on their trauma, not their healing, but based on their trauma. And as a result, what they're doing is you become like a magnet. You start attracting all of these other unhealed people. And yeah, you have a 3-day conference. And in that 3-day conference, you talk all about how you were abused. You talk all about how you were forgotten. And you throw out some mantras out there about we coming out on top. Not with that same old story, you're not. Right. What you're going to do is you're going to go to that conference and you're going to feel good. You're going to get a chemical released in your body, endorphins that make you feel wonderful about how you too have been hurt. You too had a man leave you. You too had a mama who wasn't no good. Oh, girl, your daddy wasn't there. Oh, man, your daddy wasn't there either. Mine wasn't either. And you're trauma bonding. But at the end of those 3 days, you go home and your life will be the same if you don't change. And I think that is the thing that people get irritated by. Because they say things like, you don't know what I've been through. I don't have to know what you've been through. I know a God who will take you through.
Listen, that
preach. Y'all both preaching tonight. When you were talking, it reminded me of when years ago, I used to work at Rape Crisis. And I was the education coordinator. So basically my job was to go out in the community and help people recognize what sexual assault was. And one of the roles was to help men understand what sexual assault was. Okay. Well, we had a therapist on, and every Wednesday, this lady came in and I could hear her crying in my office. So after about the 7th week of working there, I wait till she leaves and I say to the therapist, like, what's going on? Because I'm talking every time she is breaking down. And she said, oh, that happened to her 10 years ago. And I said, so you're using the hour to have her relive it. So she was raped 10 years ago. But she comes here every week for an hour for y'all to relive it, for her to walk through the pain of it again. And that's really probably when I started saying there has to be something better. I'm not minimizing your experience, but the truth of it is that a lot of people don't realize they get addicted to the pain of their story. They get addicted. We see it around holidays. There are people already right now who have decided they cannot have a good Thanksgiving because Big Mama's not here.
Yeah.
They cannot enjoy Mother's Day because their mother has never. They got 3 kids of their own who absolutely love them, but they cannot enjoy Mother's Day. And like a lot of times in the comments, people go, "How do you do it? How do people make a choice?" Because people seem to struggle with how to make a choice. How do you make a choice?
But they actually are making a choice. People think making a choice is difficult. It's not. You make a choice. Not making a choice is a choice. If you choose not to get free, you are choosing to be in bondage.
Everybody stop and write that. If you choose not to get free, you are choosing to remain in bondage.
Yes, you're making a choice. The question becomes, do I make the choice that will better me? Or do I make the choice that lets me feel the way I think I want to feel? That's really the question. Do I want to keep feeling this? Do I want to keep feeling this uniqueness that I have attributed to my trauma? Because people love being unique in their trauma. That it's like that old song that nobody knows. People want to feel, and I don't think that they understand it, but it's almost like I have a unique trophy for my trauma. And if I let this go, what's going to be my uniqueness?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
it becomes part of the identity.
Yeah.
It becomes part of the identity. And I think part of I had a person say to me, I could tell that her sharing was rehearsed, that this wasn't the first time she told the story. And so I listened to the whole story, which y'all know, first of all, was hard for me. And so I listened to everything, that she had to say, because I was like, I need 3 bullets, ma'am. But she was, going through this. And when I say 3 bullets, I mean bullet points, people, not 3 actual bullets. But she was talking and she was sharing and she began to cry. And, and I said, I asked her when this situation happened, and similar to what Pastor Shana shared, it was like 6 years prior. And I said, okay. I said, what have you done? What did you do year 1 after this occurred? And she was like, well, I went, and she named some things she did. And so what'd you do in year 2? And I said, well, what is preventing you from growing from this? What's blocking your ability to heal from this? Like, what's making you accept this life? What's making you accept this mindset to attach to this as your identity? Like, what's keeping you stuck here? And she's like, I don't know. And so I started to push, because then you've already took 20 minutes of my time with the story. Now I'm going to take the other 20 with talking through it. And so I asked her, I said, do you love yourself when you wake up in the morning? And she said, no. And I said, well, tell me some more about that. So she started to talk about that. And I said, are you okay with that? Are you okay with not loving yourself? And she said, well, absolutely not. I said, well, what are you going to do about it? And she said, well, what can I do? I said, we're not talking about your husband or your kids. We're talking about you. You have full control over you.
Mm-hmm.
You have full control over your body. You
Yep.
have full control over your thinking. You have full control over your emotions. And we want to give up all that power, because then it makes it easier for us to blame somebody else, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
I can't control what Pastor Shun is going to do. I can't control what you are going to do, Pastor Edwin, but I can control what Unique is going to do. I
Yep.
can control how Unique is going to think, and I can attach myself to people and or education and or churches and or whatever the case may be, so that I can get free. And when I think about it, someone that I did turn a little notes back on over here, but I don't know if I'm gonna be able to stay there. But when there's somebody said that you have to decide, it's like, how do I do it? You decide. And after that decision though, right? Once you make that decision, I think the next step there is understanding. Now I've decided that I want something different. In corporate, we call it a gap analysis. Now I say, okay, I know I want something different, but there's space in between where I want to be and where I am and where I want to be, whether that's mentally, physically, whatever the case may be, soulfully, but there's a gap there. And so what are the incremental steps that I can take, and take a pen and a paper and literally write out what are some of the incremental steps that I can take in order for me to get from A to B. I think about this, with weight loss. I can say tomorrow I want to wake up and be a size 7. That's not realistic because tomorrow I can't turn into a size 7, even if I got it cut off. Right? There's no way for me to go from where I am now to a 7, but there are incremental steps that I can take over a period of time to get. I don't want to be a 7, by the way, because that's not a good size for me. I'm going to be maybe a 12 or 14, but and for y'all that are 7s, that's great. Just I'm too tall for it. But when I think about that, there are incremental steps that would take me towards that. It took me time to get the weight on. It may take some time and some steps for me to get the weight off. The second thing is once I identify those the third thing is once I identify those incremental steps, who can hold me accountable? And not someone that's going to be like, oh, baby, it's okay. You didn't do, oh, that's okay. No, who can hold me accountable? Who's going to hold me accountable to my healing? If I say I'm going to do certain things in order for me to be well, it could be one of your friends that checks you on your speech. When you start talking a certain way, they say, that's not what we agreed to. Yeah. You agreed that you would talk differently about yourself. It could be someone saying, don't text him, don't call him, don't go lay up with him. This ain't what we agreed to for your healing. You're supposed to be away from that. Whatever that case may be, who can be an accountability? Who is able to sit, to be present to make sure that you don't fall off of your healing and go right back into your old habits?
No, I think that's wonderful. Now let's talk divorce. Let's talk the dirty D. So the dirty D. That could have went so many places.
Edwin.
The one time I don't have a hoodie on.
All right, what's up?
Okay, so is it safe to say that you use this gap analysis? Because this is what I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. That sometimes relationships end. Now, I'm going to disclaim and I'm going to say sometimes they end because we never should have been in them. Sometimes they end because the person that we chose to be in it decided they don't want to do good things God's way anymore, right? Get out the comments, right? Get out the comments, right? But whether you recognize that you married the wrong person, mm-hmm. or whether you recognize that the person that you married has no interest in living for God and treating you well, what was the gap analysis that allowed you to say, because to your point, you say at the end of the day, God's story for me is victory. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life in this place that's defeat.
So what was the question?
The question is, how did you decide it? Gap analysis. Did you use a gap analysis? Like, because think about it.
Let me cut these comments off. Hold on. Now I can focus. Okay. No, they are, those Crystal and them are tripping right now. But okay, go ahead. Now what? Right. So did I use a gap analysis to decide on divorce?
Yes, because what we see a lot in Christendom, right, is that even when a relationship is abusive, when it's toxic, when the other person is not willing to change, that what we see a lot of times is people staying in the name of God and their self-esteem getting worse and all of these things. So how did you, as a Christian woman, because I know that like at one time, if I remember your story right, you're like a full, you a certified evangelist, you've been to ministry school, you're a pastor, and now you're having to say, this ain't it. This ain't God's best for me. How did you get there in a Christian world that typically doesn't let women get there?
And before you answer that, I'll say this. I think most people, whether they know it or not, they use gap analysis for lots of things. Because when we talk about gap analysis, we're talking about, as you said, our current state, where I want to be, and what's the gap that's in between there. Now, for some people, they see the gap in between as insurmountable. So they choose to stay in their current state. What we're talking about is, where do you get the fortitude? Where do you get the resolve to recognize your current state is not your best state, and then do what you need to do in between there to get to your desired state. So I wanted to say that because I think most people, if they don't even know it, they're using that gap analysis. They may just be determining the gap is so insurmountable that my current state is my only state, but it's not.
Yeah. So I think one of the challenges around there, I think there's two parts, right? So one, I'm an advocate for marriage. I am an advocate for marriage. I'm not an advocate for divorce, because sometimes I've had people walk away and think like, and come in my inbox and it's like, oh yeah, I used to, and I'm like, listen, your situation ain't my situation. You figure out yours, you and God work on your situation. So as I hate when people do that, like, but even though I'm sharing with you some of my story, it's not your story. Go back to your book. Stop stop copying off my paper.
Right.
Get your own book and get your stuff written instead of looking over on my stuff. However, couple things. So Sean, if you remember, I was unhappy. I was extremely unhappy. And I was unhappy when I woke up, and I was unhappy when I went to bed. Right. I was only happy when I was working. I was happy when I would, because at work I could win. And I didn't feel like I could win in my home, and I didn't feel like I could win in the marriage. And when I say win, I'm not talking about from an egotistical place. I'm talking about there's a lack of peace. There's a lack of provision. There's a lack of safety. There's a lack of protection. There's a lack of love. There's a lack of understanding. And so to me, those things are part of the winning recipe. And I didn't have those things, right? And so if you remember, was trying to navigate in this space of despair, because I said it several times, and have talked several times to people about this. I didn't have what I perceived as a biblical reason to divorce. Right. And so for me, if you remember, I sat in it for a minute. Like, we can go back. Y'all can't see them now because I blocked so they don't come up. But when some of the memories come up, I'd be like, oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that, because I sat there and I said, okay, this can't be what God has called me to. This can't be it. And part of that piece of it is not even when you choose wrong per se, but identifying when you did make a mistake, right? And knowing that this wasn't what I was supposed to sign up for. I go back to, are you telling yourself the truth, or are you telling yourself a lie? And I had to tell myself some truth. Some truth was, you wanted to be married. You wanted to be married more than you wanted to be a wife to the right person, right?
Can you say what that means?
So when I think about, I had a desire to have the ring. I felt like people got more respect in ministry when they were married. I was tired of being a single mother. I wanted a way. I was trying in a carnal mind to rewrite the story, because I had kids out of wedlock. I had kids, as a teenager, but I wanted to change all of those things. And so I wanted to have the ring. I wanted to have the prestige that comes with being married. I don't think, when I look back now as I've gotten older, when I got married the first time, I definitely wasn't ready for that. You know what I mean? It sounded like a good thing to do. I remember he asked me in a public forum, and I felt pressured. I couldn't say no, because I used to be a comedian. It's no joke. I was on stage. I just did a show. And if anybody tuning in from Columbus, they'll tell you I did a show, and I think I'd opened up for Big Worm. And because I knew I was supposed to have a mic, I wasn't preaching then. I was just like, I'm supposed to talk to groups. So I went to the comedy stop in Columbus, Ohio, and started my comedy career. And so for those of y'all that don't think I'm funny now, I was funny back then.
You funny now.
But he asked me in front of all these people, and I remember thinking, oh, I should probably do this, because there's a couple hundred people here. I should probably do this. There was, when I think about me being married and the immaturity around me being married, there was never the process and the covenant mindset in going in it. I start there. Okay. I start with, I received warnings both times from those people's family members not to do it. Start there. I start that every time I took them around and asked people to do the test and say what you think, people say, I don't think that's the person. And I still went. So friends, family, people who love me going, and I'm like, no. I'm about to ask married now. So I'm trying to run out. In neither of my marriages did I have a actual wedding. My first marriage, I got married. My father married us in the living room. I had on a pair of Super Tims, some baggy jeans, and a Carl Kanai sweatshirt. The second time we got married by a pastor that we weren't even really being, that was a whole catastrophe, but we got married. We got married so we wouldn't burn. Right. You know, so I was like, listen, we got some problems. So we're gonna have to go and speed this up because I can't be around you if we, you know, I don't want to go to hell. So let's get married. And so, you know, with that, and somebody put in the thing, don't ignore the red flags. And some of those red flags are yours.
Come
Red
on.
flags, we're always talking about the red flags of everybody else's, but I take full
Yeah.
responsibility for my role in those marriages, my role in those divorces. Now, all of that for both marriages, I did get to it was Sean, I can't remember. I hope you remember this, but it was hard for me to exit. I wanted to exit. I talked a lot about exiting. People were sending me books. Matter of fact, I think the first thing you sent me, did you have a marriage workbook?
I did have a marriage workbook, but I only sent it to you because you told me you wanted your marriage to work. If you had told me you didn't, I never would have sent it to you.
We were only Twitter friends back then. I didn't think you was ready for all of it, you know. So I was just like, but she sent me this marriage. I remember the first thing I got from Sean. I think I actually bought it. She sent me a marriage workbook, and I did. Right, I did want my marriage to work, but I wanted my marriage to work not from a place of I love my husband, but more from a place of fear of failure. Right, and the consequence that comes to
let's say law that, because I think that requires some maturity to say, I'm not necessarily staying here because I love him, because I believe we have a covenant work. I don't want to fail.
Right.
I don't want to fail. And I think that that's a very important thing. I also want to say, because you said something earlier about red flags, and this is what I say to women sometimes. I say, if you picked a man because it was safe, because he would let you make all the decisions, you can't be mad now because you have a husband that won't make any decisions, because you picked that because you got a benefit from it.
Listen, and I think when I think about maturity, a lot of maturity for me has probably been in the last decade, from 40 to 50. And I think about in those, one, from a place of pride, I wanted to have control, and I also wanted to fix. So I would grab a fixer-upper, right? And then I could feel good, Pastor, when I produced, right? Like when I got with you, you dressed this way, but now you dress that way. When I got with you, these are your vacations, and now you got these vacations. So certain different things, your vernacular was this way, and now your vernacular is that way. You've never been in this kind of room, and now you're in this kind of room. And a lot of that came from all of that came from a place of pride, right? And so I think that when I look back and I think about even the next phase, because I intend to possibly, you know, and it's not that I need to work on my confession. I'm literally going through this in my mind of if I'm going to get married again. I've been thinking a lot about it lately. But I when in those moments, that very immature and insecure and prideful person who was probably stuck in one of those previous chapters, that is the person that got married. That is the person that came into the marriage. And as a result, I saw somebody said that your picker may be wrong. And I think that's accurate. I think your picker can be wrong, especially when you're stuck in a chapter that you refuse to allow to be rewritten. Right. And so I think about, my mother had very little respect for men. She had very little respect for their position. She had very little respect for who they were. I heard all my life how men were dogs. I heard all my life about how you can't trust men. I've been around situations where my mom fired guns at men, like I've been through some things. And I didn't even think of those things as a part of trauma, but those things were embedded in me through a process to say, and my mom would say, if you want something done, you do it yourself. If you want it done, you can make your own money, get your own property, do your own, never depend on a man. Like that was probably her number one mantra, right up under men are dogs. Men are dogs, never depend on a man. So as I'm growing up, I'm getting both of those, that's a dog and I got to get my own. And so in that, the way that transferred for me when I went into my marriages is I needed someone that was going to actually submit to me while I was out here saying I wanted to submit to someone. That was not the truth. That's the truth now, but that was not the truth at that time. And so then I got angry because they weren't showing up When I would, I'm like, well, why don't you step into the place of the king of the house? Why don't you step into this, well, you emasculated them when you got them. And it probably was only halfway there before you did that. And so when you bring them in, you strip them down, and then you like, I'm running this because of what I make or who I am or what I do or my personality, or because you moved into my house. And so that's one part of it. I think as for those women that are out there, go back and explore part of the reason, like, how did you get there? How did you get into the marriage? Because that still is a part of the healing. If you're going to stay in that marriage, if you're going to stay in that place. Now, I am against being in a marriage where there's abuse, period.
Absolutely.
Period. And I don't just mean abuse.
We're vocal about that. Very vocal about that. That
like you were the kids.
You are being physically abused. And I know pastors have sent women back home and all, and men too. But if someone is physically abusing you, your number one concern should be is to put as much distance between you and that individual as you can. And I'll challenge anybody who says that is not of God, because one of the things that happens so many times is we send people back into those situations, telling them to pray about it while they get their brains knocked out, and someone actually ends up killing them. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want people to know, if you come to me and you start talking about the fact that the other person's abusing you, especially physical abuse, I'm telling you, you need to put distance between yourself.
You or the kids.
Yep.
Like if there's abuse that is occurring to me, then that's not. I mean, could that person change? They could, but I'm not going to sit there while they change. I'll go somewhere else and they can figure it out, and we can see what happens later. But and so Pastor Shun, to your point, I think when I think about the gap analysis for me, being married but still being single, right? Being lonely in your house. I don't know how you can be married and be lonely. And having those things just kind of really, there was a vicious cycle there where my needs weren't being met. So I would lash out and I would degrade him. Then my needs, his needs aren't, all of our needs, like this whole cycle of what was taking place in the house. And again, like I said, I entered in both marriages in the wrong way. My first marriage was more of the one of, I want someone I can control. My second marriage, I received a prophetic word that when I went to Florida, I was going to meet my husband. And it was some people that I trusted that gave me that word. And so I got down to Florida, and then here comes somebody who was like, I think you're my wife. I was like, well, there it is. And I remember talking to somebody and I said, I don't feel anything for this person yet. Will it come later? Like, do you grow into love later? Am I supposed to have the butterflies? Like, what's the situation? Because I ain't feeling the thing, but it's cool, right? And this person was very much into the word, and that was something I was enamored by, because I had never met a person. Listen, I joke a lot, but when it comes to truly dissecting the word and studying, like, that's my jam. Like, I can get lost in it, like just all the books out. I don't even like to use the computer or use my phone. I like to touch, like I like to study, and he could match my dynamics, like between Greek, Hebrew, manners, and customs. Like, I was like, yo, okay, maybe I is your wife. And then immediately we started a church, and we started to pastor, and that was like hell. That was just like not a good situation. It was horrific. It was like I think about that those points, those moments in my life, I probably was the most unhappy and felt the most trapped. Like I remember I used to think, how can I get out of this? First it was, how can I get out of this pastoral role? And then it was, how can I get out of this state? And then it was, how can I get out of this marriage? Those were like, it was just literally, and I received, I don't advise this, okay? Because there was people that wanted to know how I was doing during the demise of this marriage. And I remember praying. I got in my closet and I said, Lord, I won't leave without biblical reason. Give it to me. I'm not lying to y'all. I promise you, give it to me. Don't pray this prayer, y'all. Do not write this in the comments and be like, y'all be like, I want the prayer Sierra and the prayer. Don't do the prayer Unica, okay? So I prayed for it. And then I had a person reach out to me, the spouse of a woman, to let me know that my husband had cheated. And I rejoiced. Real talk. No lie, no exaggeration. I rejoiced. And I remember I mentioned it. I was like, oh, so cheated, and this is the next step. And they're like, you're saying that. I think you're not processing your feelings. I was like, no, baby, I processed all my feelings. I know exactly where I'm at. It's all good. And from that moment, it was a pretty quick process.
Say, this was my gal jail free card.
No, it's funny. You actually called me and you were like, oh my God, I can leave. I can go. Like, I was like, wait, what happened? How do you feel? You were like, I feel like I can leave and I can go. But one of the things that I think as we get ready to wrap up that I really like about this, I like your honesty throughout, because I feel like a lot of times when people won't look at themselves, they are like the relationship is failing because he won't do, because she won't do. But in reality, sometimes the relationship is failing because a healthy me never would have picked you.
That part. Yeah. I was gonna say we can point it at the person, but we have to take the accountability for our yes.
Yeah.
We said a yes. We came to the table with a yes. We decided that we would do it. We said that we would sign up for it. When it says he that finds a wife finds a good thing, and we're out here being found, and then not everybody that's finding you is a husband. Just because they find a wife don't mean that they're a husband. And so I think, stepping back, and it goes back to where we started, is how do I submit everything unto the Lord so that I can be healed? Because that's a different person that's showing up now to be found. That's a different person that he can find. That's a different person that you can connect to. My no is real thorough these days, and should I share my dating process? You guys know, yes.
No, you should share your dating process. People need to hear that.
Now, before you say that, let me say this. There's a couple comments I saw in the comment that I just want to address. When we were talking about abuse, and I got really serious about this idea of physical abuse, and people were saying, emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, all of those things are abuse. I agree 100%. My point in saying that if there's physical abuse, you need to get away, because I have counseled couples who emotionally abuse each other every day. They cuss each other out, they yell, they scream. I've talked to couples who they have both had affairs, but they still want to stay together. Those things, people who are on drugs and one person wants to stay because sometimes they don't realize that they're actually part of their problem is that they're an enabler, right? What I'm saying is people can choose to stay and work through all of those things. I am telling you that in a physical situation, it almost never ends up good. It never ends up good. So yes, I want to be clear. Pastor Edwin believes that emotional abuse is bad. I believe sexual abuse is bad. Financial infidelity is bad. Sexual infidelity is bad. Touching on the kids is a no-go. Putting your hands on your spouse, that should be a no-go. But at the same time, I'm not telling everybody they got carte blanche to leave every time someone say a word you don't like, because we say everything's abuse.
That's such good.
So you got to be able to govern between those two. And I just want to state that, since it's on this broadcast, that people were saying, all these things are abuse. Should we leave? Well, I don't know, but I can tell you long term, I ain't staying with nobody who cuts me out every day.
Facts.
I ain't staying with a wife who long term we don't have sex often. It needs to be on the regular. I'm just saying. So you have to determine what abuse is, right? But if somebody punch you in the face, that's abuse. We don't have to think about that. Somebody slap you and say, "Oh my God, I never do it again." That's abuse. And so that's why I wanted to be specific on that point.
Well, I think that singles should not be having sex, not on the regular. Okay, if y'all ain't married, y'all should be closed, your pants should be zipped.
And I want to say this: that if somebody is touching your kids, we don't work through that, because we don't work through with nobody touching your kids. If somebody's touching your kids, we don't work through that. That's not what we do.
Away from them,
but we literally just watched the story, and then we do want you to talk about your dating process. We just watched a story where a man kept calling the police because his wife was hitting him, but she was little. And when they came to the house, the next time.
It was like that came like 5 times.
5 times.
And every time they just kind of told him, chill out, man.
Chill out,
leave
go
the
leave the house.
come back.
She stabbed him in the heart. And Edwin made a good point. Edwin said, listen, whether you little or big, if somebody stabbed you in the heart, you probably ain't gonna make it.
She stabbed him.
And he died.
He died.
And he died.
That's why when I talk about abuse, I talk about it both ways, for men or women. It's some, and I'm not saying all, but it's just like it's some crazy, crazy men. It's some crazy women out here too.
And his family came out and said, we begged him to leave.
I think she was like 5'2" or 5'3", and he was like 5'10", whatever, kind of a big, kind of a husky guy. But I don't care how husky you are, you get stabbed in the heart, you dying.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeah. So talk about your dating.
No,
I just wanted to clarify that.
No, because we try to be really honest and say that at the end of the day, I mean, at the end, and I'll say this because we go end on a high note because your dating is petty, so we go end on this. Okay? But your dating is petty, so we go end on this. But even something like this, you're married to somebody who always sleeping around. You can die like that.
Yes.
You can die like that in 2 ways. You can get HIV, and you can also have somebody come to your house and kill you because they're in love and they believe you are the reason. We watch, I think during the pandemic, there was a pastor. There was a pastor in Memphis who had been cheating on his wife. The woman, the mistress,
piece, whatever you call her,
who was a therapist,
yep,
came to his house and killed him and shot her.
Yep.
So in this day and age, with the mental instability and the demonic activity, the truth of it is we got to say, I know the end of my story is victory. And I'm not going to keep letting you do stuff that put my life at risk. You're not hitting me. You're not touching my kids. And you're not going to have no boo who think I'm the reason we can't be together. Y'all can't be together.
That's right.
So I'm just saying this. Now, okay.
What was that thing from I can't remember the girl's name, but I know the guy's name was Joey Buttafuoco. Y'all remember that group, that situation? I can't remember their name, but I remember I was young and I was like, well, that's
we were too.
That was bad. So what I was gonna share that Pastor Chun thinks is petty, but I'm gonna say that it's also part of
it's not petty. Wait, it's not petty that you do it. You're petty, so you make it petty. That's what I'm really saying. That's what I'm talking about.
So here's the thing, because people ask me about this a lot. And I don't always talk about it. I've been thinking about trying to write it down. And I'm not saying that it works because I'm still single, but there's a process. One of the things I think when we're hurt and when we've picked wrong, what can happen is that chapter, we get stuck there. And so we won't venture out and try. We won't go out and, you have people, you hear, all the time people talking about, well, you want to be married, but you don't go anywhere. You stay in the house. You want it to be the Amazon driver. Like no one can find you because you're not outside. And if you go to a church that's 99% women and 1% men and they're married, he might not be there either, right? Unless he's going to be a new member. And so part of what I started to do is I would take I'll take one. I live my life in quarters, which I talked to you all about before. So I take a quarter and I date. People fall off. And then I take a quarter off and I heal again from the dating process. So I'll take and here's the thing. No one, I'll go through a process and I may date 5 people. And dating for me, I'm not talking about courting. I'm talking about dating. And I'm talking about the what's your favorite color conversations, and which I despise, but that's another topic. But those kind of conversations. So I get to know a certain amount of people at a time. And I see how they are. It helps me to practice my ability to have patience, to build up some trust, to have trust in myself, to understand what it's like to go out on a date and just to see how stuff works.
I don't want to interrupt you. But can you just say that again, that when a person is dating, because I think at least within African-American communities, when people hear, wait, she dating 5 people at one time,
Right.
not having sex with 5 people at one time.
I
I'm
ain't have
not
sex with
having
one.
an involved relationship. Right, that's what I'm saying. But
Right.
but people hear that, and I think that so many people, when they think date, they it's like they go on one date and now it's like, okay, well, do we go together or not? No, I'm dating multiple people to get to know them. If I'm a single person in that dating field.
Absolutely. I think that for me, and I'm just going to say, and again, you don't have to don't copy off my paper, find out what works for you. But I'm not going to first of all, I'm not initiating commitment. And I think what happens is we go off of what we think the other person is saying. He calls me every day, so we must be in a relationship. Do you tell you in a relationship?
Right.
You ain't in a relationship, baby. You're not in a relationship. And so I start out and I'll say, I'm going to, and in my brain, I just kind of open myself up to being able to date. Some people I find, people will say, "Hey, I want to introduce you to someone." I'd be like, "Wait, if it's meant to be, I'll get to see them, but I'm not talking to people getting into January or whatever the case may be." And the process, though, I go through getting to know people, paying attention, but my yeses are harder to get now, right? Because some of the things that used to impress me are the things that are the bare minimum that someone should do because of the injury that I had. I would be impressed by things. I remember I was talking to, I think it was you, Sean. I was talking to, and I was like, "Oh, and he did this, he did that." And I think everyone was in the background. I was like, "They supposed to do that." It was either you or Katina. And I was like, "They supposed to do that." Okay, let me think about that. Okay, so I had that as a high bar. Let me take that down to the flow. That's not the ceiling. That's not, but
Well,
when you
on speakerphone,
I remember the conversation.
and he was like, what are you doing? We don't get no brownie points for that foolishness right there.
I was like, hold on, I had all the warm and fuzzies. I thought this person might make it. And then my brother said, "No, that's not a thing." And so you have to be, because I have to get back. Unica had to get back into a place. Let me back up. Sometimes you don't realize you're still hurting something until you test it, right? So even when you have, like, you could sprain your ankle and you may be able to walk on it, but then you may go to run and you realize that I wasn't prepared to run, because that injury is that physical injury is still present. And when you're in the process of healing, and even if you're like, "I've overcome this thing and I've moved past this thing," sometimes you don't know if you've truly moved past it until it's touched again. Right? Until they said they were going to call at 5 and they don't call until 7. So is someone not keeping their word? "Oh, that's right. My mom said all men are dogs. That's right. My mom said not to depend on," right? Okay, well, now let me cancel that. So now I'm triggered. So I have to go back and realize, how do I handle this thinking? How can I get through this? And so I'll go through, I'll talk to five to six. Six is the most. It's hard. I don't have a lot of time to do 6 people. I barely got enough time to do 5. And I'll go through the process, and my yes is not as easy. And I'm talking about my yes to where these people don't even have a name saved in my phone.
You better
Their name not even saved in my phone, right? They're not, they can't commandeer my time, where it's like, "Oh my gosh, let me rush because I want to let me say no to Trey and go over here so I can talk to this boo thing." They don't have that because they don't have my yes, and they shouldn't be giving that to me. And as people drop off, I don't keep them as friends. I used to keep people as friends. Now I'm like, I have a beautiful text that I've crafted that I use each time to say, "Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we're going in the same direction. At the end of this text, if you have joined me on social media, I will be blocking you there. I will be blocking your incoming calls and texts on this phone." And I literally disconnect, because disconnection is important for me. I like people to know where they stand, just in case I bump into them in the street. And so I go through a process, and I've had people say, "You know what, I understand," and they'll let me go. I had some people get frustrated and try different things and create new Facebook accounts, which I think is weird. But I go through that process. Then I take that next quarter and I heal. Well, what do you heal from? I heal from the guy that may have ghosted me. And so then I start thinking about my worth, and will somebody really want me? So I got to go through a process and heal through that. So I take some time on, then I take some time off, because the thing about healing is it's a journey. You get to a destination, but it's a journey. Anything can occur over time that makes that wound pop back up. You have to make sure you have strategy in place. That's why at first I was just like, "Okay, I'm a date." People are like, "Let me hook you up with this person. Let me have you talk to this person." I would jump on the dating sites, and I'm just with dating sites. The more you spend, the better the population. So if you got a free membership, or if you got a $39 membership, you're gonna get $39 people. But I will hop on a site, and I may spend some time on a site. I may go out to different places. I'll go into the city of Philadelphia. I'll go to the Ritz-Carlton, and I'll have dinner by myself where the business travelers are. I go to the airport, I go to the lounges, I sit in the lounges, and I make sure that, you know, I'm carrying a demeanor that I'm open, you know, and I'm open to meet people. And I've been surprised, just as during the process of healing, that when I was not healed, right, and I wasn't open for dating, people didn't approach me. And I can be like not even close to cute. I'm talking about like hat on, it's a 6 o'clock flight. We barely, you know, you lucky my breath smell good, and people will still approach, because I'm showing people that I'm open. Like there's something that comes off of me that says this person is open, and she's going through the process. But I think even in dating, you have to make sure you're not going back rereading the failure in relationship, even if it's friendships, if it's where you've had a failing with your parents or whatever the case may be, because that will prevent you from being open to something that's truly great for you.
I saw you talked about dating sites, and you know that used to be like a taboo kind of thing, but now, I mean, that's just how people meet each other now. But
The pandemic did that.
it's funny that you say that, because I saw an advertisement in my feed one time, and I never forgot it. It said, it talked about the quality of the website, and it said, if you pay peanuts, expect to get monkeys. So the quality of your money investment in terms of that site is going to determine also the quality of the people in that site. And if you pay peanuts, you expect monkeys.
Well, one of the things I really love, I think you date in a very safe way. I think you dated in a very safe way, because I think that you have not just included me and Katina and LaShawn in this journey, but you've also included the guys.
Yeah, I included Rob.
Oh.
LaShawn.
Oh, okay. But
like, girl, how much money you got? I'm like, wait, we gotta look at all the stuff. No, I'm just playing.
No, but you included Edwin. You included, and one of the things that I see a lot of times with women is that women, they say that they want the tribe to help them pick until somebody pays them attention. And then they're so enthralled with the intention that they end up getting injured, ghosted again. Because one of the things that Edwin and I say to women, we've tried to say that, we've said this to our sons, we've said this to our daughters, that at the end of the day, that if a man is interested in you, you should not be getting on a plane or driving anywhere to see him. He should be coming to you. And if he makes a lot of promises about coming and he doesn't, you already know what kind of husband he would be.
That part, I think you added some layers there, because y'all don't even get to know them unless if I think I'm going to go somewhere, and I don't pause, I don't hide them. Is they're just not worth muddying the conversations. We got other stuff to talk about. When they get to that point, then I'll mention. And I think it was either you or Katina that said, "Oh, they have a name," right? So when a name comes, they're like, "Hold up,
the name." Wait, a name. Who is it? And then I say, "Give me last name so I can Google. Let me find out what's happening." Yeah,
but I don't go through and say, you know, here, because I'm not starting back up until January. And in January, I'm actually doing something where I'm paying a little more and going through a matchmaking service, right? Where they match you based on things. And so it's not a site, it's more that you actually have a person who does matchmaking. And I'll take, you know, a few people from that, and I may be open to meeting some other people or being out in places where I can meet people. But those people there's a process for me that helps me to stay safe even before the tribe comes in, right? And that process, like I said, they're not saved in my phone. Then I'd be like, oh, I might not want to miss this person's text messages. Right. Then they get a name. You know what I mean? Their name may be in there, but I'm still not allowing them to commandeer my day. I'm not allowing them to, I'm not denying, I believe we all know this. When I say yes to something, I'm saying no to something else. So my yes has to be great. Like, it has to be worth it. Because if I say, even me saying yes to this, I didn't retrace his story. We're not doing some cuddling. You know, there's some things that I had to say no to in order to get on this live. And so that's the same when you're spending time as a single and you're talking to people, is understanding that if I say yes, I'm saying no to something else. And so very few people will have me say no to a bag, but no to Jesus, no to going to church, no to serving in ministry. And sometimes I think we rush and we give up all our yeses really quick, right? We get excited because when we're not healed, the tiniest piece of attention makes us think that person is the one. And there's been a lot of talk online about, will people go to the Cheesecake Factory or will they go here or there? And what if people have a list? And I'm going to pull this up just real quick because I know we got to go. I do have a list, but I don't have the kind of list that people would think that I would have. So my list is this. And it's titled Him. It says, what does God say? God says that this man will be sure about me. He will naturally lead me and never be intimidated by me. He will create a safe place for me. He will not be insecure, and he will love God with all of his heart. That will be evident through not only what he says, how much time he spends in the word, his church attendance, his tithing record, and his relationship with his pastor. Because people like to go to these churches and say they go, especially here in Philly, we got some big churches of people that I go to this church. Don't nobody know you there. Yeah. When you go, where you go? Oh, you online. Okay. And then I said, I asked God this, I want him to love God with all his heart. I want him to serve in ministry, because if he doesn't serve in ministry, this is another thing. I will get unequally yoked with people because I wouldn't even think about the things I like to do. And I love what y'all said about not having to walk together, but I also see that y'all both are on a fitness journey together. Do you know what I'm saying? And so if that wasn't my journey, then I'm bringing all the yo-yo, whatever you call ho-hos and all that into the house and fixing high carb or high fat meals or whatever. Like I remember when y'all came off a meeting, when you would joke about it, but you like, listen, okay, this makes sense. But if someone who doesn't serve in ministry and can't see that, they can't be with me, because they're gonna get upset every time I go and serve. They're gonna get frustrated by that. Someone who's not faithful in ministry, someone who doesn't have vision, someone who doesn't have work ethic, someone they have to value family. They have to love kids. They have to love seeing kids. I have a loud house. I have grandbabies, so they have to love that. So I'm not gonna go through the whole list, but I think so often we have this list of he has to make 6 figures and he has to be this tall and he has to have this kind of hair and I want him to drive this kind of car. And that is why the divorce rate is so high, because you got those things. He came, you got that, you thought it was great. But then when you look back around, you pay attention and you're like, I chose wrong. And my picker was off because my list was off.
And let me say this, and then we really we'll let you go. We know you're an hour later than we are. Right. But the other thing that I have felt, and I actually talked to we went to a men's trip in Dallas, and I actually said to some of the guys that I'm gonna figure out how to do a podcast on this. But one of the things I think that we've really gotten messed up in the dating world is this idea, and you kind of hit on it, that like women are saying in some cases he needs to make X amount of money, right? He needs to be this tall. He needs to have this kind of career. He needs X, Y, and Z. And yes, there are some men who would fit that entire category you're looking for. Yeah. But if you take all of the men and you use a bell-shaped curve, those men who fit everything that we just named right there are 2 or 3 standard deviations away from the mean. Those particular men are being sought after by 95% of the women. Right. So even as a woman, if you get a man like that, why do you think he's going to be faithful with just you?
That's so good.
People don't want to talk about that part. They don't want to talk about the fact people use the term that Kevin Samuels made famous about a high value man. You want a high value man, and no disrespect to anybody, but what high value are you bringing? So it's like, well, I only want to date up. So if all the women want to date up, that means all the men dating down. And if all the men dating down, why? If I got to date down, why I just got to have one of you? And I don't think people want to deal with that. And they wonder why it is, Unica, why they say, well, I want this kind of man. I want him to be faithful. Baby, you want a millionaire who is 6'4", 215 pounds and chisel, and you think he just going to want you when you 5'2", 350? I'm just saying. And at some point, I'm going to get a chance to really talk about it. I'm going to get a chance to really talk about it.
Because it's true, though. I think, had someone ask me, they said, did I think my expectations were high? And that was what prompted me to go back and look at the list. And I think when you asked me that one time too, when y'all were here, you know, and I was like, between you and Bishop, that, you know, Katina's husband, who's a Kappa, I'm like, y'all don't got no convocations or no what, I mean, where I need to go, where I need to be. And so, but I was even in the mindset then, like, and you said it, you were like, I don't think you in the space where you would date. I can't send nobody to you. And I thought about that. I don't know if you remember saying that to me, but I thought about it and I was like, you know what, he's right. I ain't it.
We were in Vegas because there was a guy I thought could have been the guy. And then when the way you talked, I said, Edwin, she gonna hurt him. Just leave that man over there where he is. She's gonna hurt him. Remember that? Babe?
I do.
I know. And I wasn't ready. I wasn't in the mindset of it. And I had to go back like that. That statement, it stung. And I remember I laughed it off. I was like, I know that is. When I thought about it, and I was like, wait a minute. That's true. Like, I'm not really open. I just want to play a game right now. I mean, I want to play. I'm a little bored. You know, boredom for me is a problem, right? So I'm like, let me fill my schedule with some pertinent things so that and that is a thing. I would say that real quick, then we can go, or however y'all want this y'all show. When you are bored, boredom puts you in a position to make bad decisions, and it makes you highlight your desperation. Yes, so get yourself some business, like get yourself something. I have not waited for any of the things. Like if I wanted, I will treat myself to a phenomenal dinner. I've sat in the movie theater by myself and watched a movie. Like I'm like, I don't need to just sit here and hope and wait for things. I'm out here living. You know, I'm out here and I'm making sure that I'm not bored, because I know when I get bored, I don't act right. Do you know what I mean? I just don't act right. Like I'm like, all right, let me see if I can get my phone, my hotline to bling. And I know I can if I need to, right? But do I want that bling? Like I remember I used to joke and say, man, I done flirted myself into a whole situation. And how do I get back out of this situation? I don't do that anymore. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, okay, I'm being intentional about who I talk to, when I talk to them, how long I talk to them, what time I'm talking to them. And you know, and it's an interesting dynamic. So I think that you just got to make sure that you're living and that you are not walking in desperation, because there are people, both men and women, that smell desperation a mile away and they'll take advantage of that.
That's exactly right.
I think that's really good. So let me say, I think that in 2024, we definitely need to do some dating conversations. Me and Strick can really facilitate them, because we both agree on this, that we need to have some real dialogue about dating, because we laugh all the time. My grandmother used to say this all the time.
And I believe it.
My grandma used to say, date your equal.
Date your equal.
She used to say, date your equal. And the delusion that we have right now is that people they believe someone should sit them at a table that they actually aren't qualified to sit at. I want a man with an 800 credit score, but my score 350.
Is 350 a range? You can get to 350.
I think you can get down to 300. and I think and I think the truth of it is that if we really talk about relationships from a covenant perspective, women have to stop seeing men as rescuers. Men have to stop seeing women as objects and say, what can we build together? And so a lot of times when I am looking at people's conversation, I say, I wish my grandmother was here to talk to you, because some of your conversation is delusional. Even if you look at the percentage of people who make six figures, like you make 37, where would you even be to meet a man who makes $350,000? And
and a man who makes $350,000 and you making $100,000, what women don't think about sometimes is men are starting to ask themselves this question, right? If we get married and we're not talking about building something together, the moment we're not together, you're going to take half of what I got. So why would I want to even commit to marriage to someone who's not, quote unquote, on my level? So if women can say, I need a man on my level, then a man can say, I need a woman on my level. But so many times women are looking for a man to increase their net worth, and men are like, no, marriage ain't gonna do nothing but decrease my net worth. Because if this don't work out, you're gonna take half of what I got. And I think that's the conversation that people need to start having so that everybody can humble themselves
before the mighty hand of God and build something
start
with somebody.
finding somebody they can actually build something with rather than making a come up off somebody.
I think absolutely in 2024 that we got to bring Unika back and some of your guys, some guys that are single, and we need to have a real.
Oh, I got some guys ready to talk about it.
We need to have a brutally honest conversation about dating.
Mm-hmm.
A brutally honest conversation about dating.
At a certain age too, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I'm 50. So you
Right.
now, if you get with somebody who's in their 50s, there's chances there's an ex-wife. There's chances there are adult kids, grandbabies, properties, assets that need to be, you know, that you got to consider. Because I think about that. I can't get
Absolutely.
with somebody that's going. I'm in a position I can't have them take a half. So I can't.
Exactly. So listen, our next Relationships 101 is going to be, our last one of the year is going to be December the 12th, the second Tuesday in December. We got a couple of ideas of what we're going to talk about. We're not really sure yet. They're going to both be good. But yeah, in 2024, I can guarantee you we're going to have a really good session around dating. One of my I call him my spiritual son. One of my friends, he said one time, people talk about the pee in the dating pool, but they never talk about the pee they deposit.
That
He on here. He said it. I ain't gonna say who said it, but he said it. He on here. He said people talk about the pee in the dating pool, but don't talk about the pee that they deposit.
Oh, everybody shout out Unika, but even we were talking about how like there are people now in your 50s, because the truth of it is, if you are 50, if you're late 40s and 50, and you didn't just live for the Lord and you ain't spent the last 29 years married, you probably dated multiple people.
Mhm.
So it's this very interesting thing that now you as a 50-year-old are talking about somebody run through, like people don't know your history. You weren't married for the last 25 years. You got skeletons and horror stories too,
And full grown corpse
right?
in the closet.
So how am I 50 expecting someone to show up with the purity of a 16-year-old when I got my own stuff?
That's why we got to date.
chapters, they got all those chapters.
those
That's what we
chapters.
just talked about. They got all those chapters, and some of them chapters they may be stuck in and not even realize it until they get with you. That hurt is still there, and you got to be willing to get dirty with them and walk them through that process in marriage or in premarital counseling, maybe. But I ain't walking that through with somebody who on the roster of 5. You get a therapist. Or
So what I hear Unika saying is that single women and single men, y'all ought to get y'all a roster, a no sex roster, and you ought to see if this is a person that I can build with.
Absolutely.
Unika, thank you as always. Y'all give her some love. And we appreciate you so much. Looking forward to seeing you real soon. And we love you. And good night, you guys.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.